on this episode of KOKO PODS.
Near death. I didn't actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I did die, but like it wasn't permanent. Yeah, it wasn't a permanent. For the first time, realized like, oh, he was like raping people, like raping these people that I knew really well, that were like kind of extended family to us. Holy hell.
Holy hell.
And so when I started testosterone, it was like the excitement was mostly like, I'm in charge now. I get to choose who I am. That's a consequence that I don't know if I like would have been able to live with. Nah, man, we all are something, and we just need to like figure out like we are something, and we can't just like choose infinitely what we are going to be. Like we are somewhat limited by like our biology, involved in a really violent political organization.
Absolute sausage fest. On my days, I was getting touched up.
Or like, okay, the catcalling thing also. Maybe hot take here, but like, I kind of like it. But
yeah, definitely a couple of hot takes in this one. But way more important than that, Lana Power, a super interesting story. You know, she's 27, but has definitely lived a couple of lifetimes already. I mean, you heard it, or you heard quite a bit in the preview, like, you know, from taking testosterone to near-death experiences to cults to all sorts of things. Very smart. You know, she's currently a new resident in London. She's actually from Texas. Used to study gender studies. Now is studying neuroscience. So quite a big shift in degrees, I guess. But a quick shout out to her podcast. I'm going to put a link in the bio. She just released her first one, Lana Power Hour. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into KOKO PODS 16. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
How you feeling? Heart racing still?
Yeah, I can feel a little bit like my voice is like but it's so like autonomic, you know what I mean? Like I have absolutely, it feels like I have no control over it.
Yeah.
So I feel like fine, but my body doesn't.
Your body's a bit like on edge.
Yeah, like
Okay.
let's see.
Oh no. Okay, well, first of all, welcome
Thank you.
back to London. You were just in what were you
Sedona.
Huh?
Sedona, Arizona.
Arizona.
Yeah.
That was right. Yeah. And you were cooking for
Randall Carlson. Big
What
RC.
What the hell? How was that?
It was great. I don't know if I want to give the
Why do you know what?
Well, okay, so Randall Carlson is like, I'm a huge fan of his work, and he did like 2 weekends. He did like a 2-weekend kind of fundraiser thing for his school that he's trying to build. And the first weekend was like heavy hitters. Graham Hancock was there. And then the second weekend, it was like the ragtag team of like the hangers honors. It was just kind of like a real hippie weekend. So I made cookies for him.
Nice.
We smoked a joint together.
Oh, no way.
I told him about my personal theory of evolution.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's very interesting, Lana. I have to go. He like, walked away.
That's quality.
And I was like, thanks, Randall.
Thanks, Randall. Wow, you actually spoke to him fully.
Yeah, he knows my name.
Yeah.
And we did trivia. I won some CBD gummies in the trivia.
No way.
Yeah.
That is sweet.
About the torrid meteor streams. That was the question.
The what?
The torrid meteor streams.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
I think the question was about Tunguska, which is like a huge meteor impact site in Russia.
Okay, yeah, I know about that.
The teens, yeah. And so he was asking, the trivia question that I got my CBD gummies from was, what is the source, or like where did the meteor that impacted at Tunguska come from? What was the origin? And it's from the torrid meteor stream.
Okay, nice.
Fun fact.
Fun fact. I like it.
Yeah, there's trivia for all y'all.
Yeah. Nice. How was what was his presence like? Was he kind of what you imagine?
I've met him before, so I kind of knew what to expect, just in terms of him being like literally Santa. Like he's just the most like jolly, jovial man.
Yeah.
He's kind of childlike in a way, you know. He just like wants his grape juice and his cookies, and he's just like, he's very playful.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool to see somebody who's like gathered some level of like fame. You know, he's like been on Joe Rogan and stuff, and I think a lot of people, he has like a big kind of cult following now, but he's so like friendly. He knows everybody's name, and he's like playful with people.
Nice.
He's going to be a perfect educator. Like he's trying to start a school, so he's going to be perfect at
okay.
like educating kids.
Or
adults too. I mean, he's an adult educator right now.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character. Yeah, it just seems like I know when I've watched his podcast, he's so like he's so easy to follow.
Yeah,
he seems like there's no pretentiousness. There's no sort of like. I mean, I guess like I don't know, everyone has an ego, but it feels like he's very like the way he presents himself is super calming and super easy to take in from someone that sort of the way he describes things is sort of makes you feel smarter than you really are.
Yeah.
When I listen to him, I'm like, oh,
well,
wow.
there's a way he's also. It's just a matter of being a good educator. There's a way he's also repetitive with the information that doesn't make you feel like he's underestimating your intelligence. He's like circling back and like reminding you of things he's said. But sometimes people do that and you're like, yeah, bro, I fucking heard you. Like, you said it 3 times already. But I think also it just has to do with how like intelligent he is. And it's not only intelligence, but just like how much information he has stored in his brain. Like he's a rare specimen of someone who's like truly specialized in a topic that like no one. He's like a true kind of like inventive researcher. Like nobody else knows what Randall Carlson knows.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's like he has his own brand. He has his own branch of knowledge and how like archaeology relates to astronomy and geology and so that like some of the weekend that I was at was relating to like ancient myths and how the myths are written in the stars and in archaeology. And I've never heard anybody else have like kind of mold their own brand of like branch of knowledge before. And so he's like offering that package to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very rare. Like there aren't many people who do that.
No, not at all. No. Yeah, it's just sick. Yeah, I love it. He's just I've always found him very pleasant just to listen to. Yeah.
Who doesn't like Santa?
Right, yeah, he doesn't. Yeah.
And some of the also, should I back away when I?
No, you do what you please, yeah.
Some of what I was really excited about that he was talking about was like, he started releasing this content about the Holy Grail. Are you familiar with the Holy Grail?
Tell me.
It's like an ancient myth. It's like the King Arthur and the Round Table is about like this quest for the Holy Grail, which is like in myth, it's like a chalice, I suppose, that holds like the secrets of the universe. And so he was giving some presentations about how like all these old myths about the Holy Grail, about the secrets of the universe are, and he was relating it to, it's written in the stars, it's written in like the geological record. And he's basically just like producing a theory of everything. Like he honestly just has his own like brand of world history. He's like, this is what I like. It's brave. It's bold as fuck to be like, I have my own narrative of the history of life. I have my own idea of the history of the universe and evolution. And that's what makes him so like special. Is bold enough to be like, no, I think everybody's wrong.
Yeah.
And he can back it up.
Oh yeah. He's like, like what he's got like 16 hours worth of lecture just on Atlantis and like.
Oh, I watched it.
Yeah,
it's good. I recommend.
Yeah.
I can send you a password if you want to watch it.
Oh yeah. Please. Yeah, that was a nice little tangent to start off with. It's such a random thing that you know him, and like there's
it is very random.
The connection there is just like silly random.
My mom knows him. But that's also insanely random.
I mean, it's
I think they just met randomly.
Randomly,
by chance, by circumstance.
Anyway, let's get into the thick of it. I want to talk about, obviously, you've had a super interesting beginning of your life. Sort of grew up in a cult, which is pretty unusual way to grow up.
Everybody's got their own brand of freakiness.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, to be honest, I just kind of want to let you just give me an overview of that. When did it start? When did it end? And I'll sort of ask you a couple questions about
Specifically, the cult stuff.
Yes, just the first one.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get to the other ones later. Well, no. Yeah, I think my story isn't necessarily that I grew up in a cult and this kind of stereotyped idea of how you would see like isolation from the outside world and like being completely indoctrinated. The situation was just that when my parents divorced when I was like 5, my mom kind of joined a spiritual community, I guess, which was like in the West is the origin of a lot of kind of culty type things. And she kind of hid it from us for a while. Like hid it from us and my dad. And then just as time went on, she got like more involved. Like she wasn't, I don't really know exactly what she was up to in those years, but it seems like her whole life was like dedicated to being in this like spiritual community. And then as my brother and I got older, we just started being kind of like brought into the fold. Like the meetings, we would have these like meditation meetings where you basically just sit and listen to this man on like a throne talking, and he would do like active meditations, and we would play games and go on like outings and stuff. And I was a kid, so I kind of didn't think it was abnormal, you know. And in a way, maybe it's not super abnormal. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, like this is just what's happening, which was also odd because I split my time halfway between my mom and my dad's house. So it was like my brother and I were having this experience that we didn't really know how to label in any way, and we weren't talking to anyone about, because it was just like, this is just what life is like. And then we would go live with my dad, and my dad had like no idea, because my parents didn't really communicate with each other very much. And I think they just kind of had no idea like what the other parent was, how they were parenting us, I guess. And I guess I didn't realize how odd it was until like the documentary came out. Well, there was like things fell apart, and my mom told us, oh yeah, like we're not going to go participate in this anymore. Like some people think that like some people don't want to be involved anymore, but it was very vague. Like when things kind of started falling apart, it was just really vague to us. I was probably like 12 or 13. And then it was very obvious that there were like secrets that were being hidden for us. I remember Googling like weird people in Austin mystery fall apart, you know. Because I had no idea how to like label what was going on, like mystery school of people. Because what happened?
Did it have a name? Did the group give itself a name at the time?
My mom called it the Buddha Field, but there was like no official name. And the guy who was like the kind of leader of it all would change names. Like he had different names as time would go on.
Because in California he had a different name.
Yeah.
And then so what was his name to begin with?
I don't even know, to be honest. I know we called him Andreas. But every time I would ask, it was like there was a secret of like it can't be spoken. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. Like you're not allowed to like speak of him directly. Like you have to kind of talk about it abstractly. But if someone was to refer to him, it was Andreas, and that I also knew he had previously gone by Dorothy.
Right. Yeah.
I never heard anyone call him that, but that was
part of it.
Yeah.
So you were in it from what age? From 5?
No, my mom was in it at 5. I don't want to portray it like we were in it all the time.
Yeah, no, it's not just about sort of when did it begin for you.
My mom joined when I was 5, and then we started kind of getting like brought in slowly over time.
Yeah.
Probably from like 8 to 10, and then it really kind of fell apart when I was 12.
Okay, so you were in it,
13 maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then, what was the documentary called again?
Holy Hell.
Holy Hell. So that's where, and it's on Amazon. I think it was on Netflix, and now it's on Amazon now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, the crazy thing about it also, I feel like we've talked about this. Jared Leto is like one of the producers of the film.
Yes.
And like Jared Leto is kind of a figure has like kind of mystery that follows him in Hollywood. But after the movie came out, there's like pictures of him on like his like private island or something, like basically mimicking the imagery of the film, with like him in like a throne and dressed in all white with like people sitting around him listening, which is very odd. Because the documentary was kind of an expose of like
this weird,
kind of the risks and challenges of like people gathering in community and maybe like getting too involved and too invested in the community at the sake of their own lives and their own intuition and their own selves. So it was kind of like a warning in a way, but then he's taking it and being like, that's what I want.
That's what I want.
I want people to follow me around and tell me I'm a great master.
Yeah, that's a weird. You have mentioned that to me before, and strange. And then, so you left. Your mum and you guys sort of left the cult when you were sort of 13, and then the documentary came out like 5 years later. Or
no, it was. I have a horrible sense of time.
Yeah.
But I remember I went and saw it with my brother at like a local theater that was playing it. And it was like kind of one of those like, it's only showing for like 1 or 2 nights.
Right.
We went and saw it, and like everyone else in the theater was people who had been involved. So it's kind of this throwback for us to be like, oh shit, like I recognize them and I recognize them.
Yeah.
And we had no idea what the documentary was going to be about. All we knew was that like people left and my mom wasn't involved anymore.
And then that was kind of it.
Yeah. And so we had also, if you watch the documentary, you'll see that at one point they moved from Austin to Hawaii. And for a while, and at like the move from Austin to Hawaii had to do with like kind of some disclosure about like sexual assault and like sexual violence that had been happening in the cult. And people were speaking out, and some people were leaving, and some people were defending him and sticking around. And then to avoid, I think there was a lot of paranoia about the state getting involved, or like I remember there was always paranoia about the CIA or something like following them.
Yeah.
I don't know that many details about that specifically, but they went to Hawaii to kind of like avoid the all of the like speculation and rumors and stuff. And so my mom and my brother and I went to Hawaii like multiple times to be supportive and to like, just be involved, which is crazy because that kind of felt like the time that we were most involved was like when we were going to Hawaii all the time and like staying in a house with them and like really being a part of it. And so it was really wild to see the documentary that was after people already knew about all the like sexual violence stuff. Yeah. And so it's kind of strange to just be like, wow, we were all doing that and like no one told us what was going on. And like there were so many people who were in denial about what was going on, who were just like still following him. And so when my brother and I saw the movie, we for the first time realized like, oh, he was like raping people, like raping these people that I knew really well that were like kind of extended family to us. And that was wild. And it was also wild because it was just wild to realize that like my mom didn't tell us, you know what I mean? She was like, you'll figure it out for yourself. So.
Yeah, it is. What was that, my phone? How unprofessional.
Shame on you.
I know, right? I know. I mean, it's quite personal, but it's just like, you know, what do you think, how do you think that sort of experience scarred you, or not? I guess, lack of a better word, I guess scarred, and not necessarily, you know, the experience by itself, but the fact that you just sort of just didn't know anything until that documentary came out. When I guess when you sort of realized all these things were happening, how did that shift your psyche?
I don't know if scar is maybe the best way to describe it. I think it's just more of like it was an educational experience to have at such a young age, when like most people don't get that kind of insight into like the human psyche and like human impulses and like blind spots in the human psyche until they're kind of older. I look at it kind of the same way I do any difficult thing that's happened in my life, which is like it's an initiation into understanding life and yourself and humanity in a deeper level. It's like if you can step outside of any pain or confusion or like trauma, if you can kind of hold yourself in safety with all of the negative emotions involved with something, you can step outside of it and like see the insight that it can provide you. And so I think over the years, I realized that it had given me really keen insight onto the ways that people sacrifice themselves and like their intuition and their truth for the sake of belonging and community and just things that are natural human needs and desires, which is like to belong to a group and to not only to belong, but like to participate in a group and be needed and like need people. Those are deep evolutionary human needs, but also within like the complexity of our social environment, they can be like really twisted into like, they can just be like really kind of twisted and gnarled into some other like darker parts of human nature. And so like part of the thing with cults and part of why I would say I would consider this whole experience that had ended up in kind of a culty thing is that like a lot of them start with a really true desire for people to gather and to collectivize and like feel like a part of something. And then over time, like the needs of the community, the needs of the group start to become more important than like the needs and the reality of the individual people involved. And then there starts to become like a party line and like a dogmatic party line about like, well, we as a group, we think this way. And like we actually do things this way. And then it requires the people involved to start sacrificing their individuality to participate in the group think. And I can't help but feel like that's a natural evolution of like groups when not provided with like appropriate boundaries around the relationship between the individual and the group. And I think that process of like the needs of the group, the kind of dogmatic thinking in order to belong, that process is like you can see that happening in so many other ways, like everywhere in society. Like I wrote a paper in college about how like The Bachelor is that way in a way, but like just this empire of like heterosexuality is like there's certain like things that you do to just belong. And so I just feel like I saw that process happening and like unfolding, and I saw like the negative way that can unfold at a really young age, and it made me like very just aware of those processes. And that's not to say, I would love to give you some story about how like, and therefore I would never fall for that myself, you know, like therefore I like am always so aware of like how I sacrifice my truth for the sake of belonging, because like, you know, I have fallen for other kind of dogmatic group thinking things since then, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on a lot there, but
you asked for it.
Yeah, no, I did. I don't know. For me, I always find the sort of the giving up of your sort of individual ideas and individual thoughts for the sake of, you know, group thinking and stuff. And in like today's society, it's like super relevant, you know, and how I know it's probably not even just in today's society, probably in like all of human history, on how people act in groups to sort of satisfy the group need rather than, you know, them as an individual. And I guess we sort of talked about like the negative side of that, but
well, it's a question of like at what point does that like balance become harmful? Because like I'm not 100% like an individualist, like a solipsistic individualist, and like, you know, we should like the selfish gene, we should just only have our self interests in mind and like fuck everyone else. I don't think that, but there's a relationship between them, and there's ways to set boundaries between like the individual and the group that are healthy and beneficial to both. And there's ways in which that like that boundary can be exploitative one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that balance is, that equilibrium is super hard to find.
Yeah.
And it obviously gets out of hand, obviously, through cards and then all types of other stuff, you know, just pure like, you know, political groups and whatever part of society you take. There's always some sort of groupthink that, you know, it's and also it is kind of easier to, you know, when you're in a group, just not to question things, because questioning things sometimes, you know, you end up you end up a bit existential, questioning your whole existence.
Well, I think like a requirement for like that relationship to be healthy is that like questioning should always be possible. Like there always needs to be room for questioning, because I also kind of am a believer that like hypocrisy is unavoidable, and that like at the point where you can't acknowledge the hypocrisy of your group, or like even individualistically, like your own hypocrisy, like that's when things are starting to get a little twisted, you know? But if there's room and space to be like, yeah, like maybe this is something we don't completely understand, or maybe there's a little hypocrisy involved there. So to have the space for questioning, and also the kind of lenience for like admitting that like you don't have it all figured out.
Yeah.
That's how that stays kind of buoyant and not dogmatic, and doesn't get like rooted down into
right. It's just
dogma.
not you know, it's not black and white, you know, there's lots in between, lots of like nuance. Okay. Just to move on from that, you had pretty severe ski accident that I also want to touch on a little bit.
I did.
Yeah.
I forget about it sometimes, but I did.
I don't know how you forget about that, but
it's just not pertinent in my mind all the time.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But you had a near-death experience, or a death experience?
I sit here before you today.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
So it was a near death. I didn't actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I did die, but like it wasn't
permanent.
Yeah, it wasn't a permanent. Wasn't the long good night. You know what I mean? It was just a little short good night.
That happened when you were like 18 or something?
Yeah, I was 18 or 19.
Yeah.
December 19th, 2013.
Okay, so you know the day.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, of course.
So you were skiing, you hit a tree, you split your head open.
Yeah,
and
my jaw.
Your jaw.
Like my teeth split apart.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it went, and you were clinically dead for how long, do you know?
I don't know. Like a lot of the early medical records about it, we haven't seen for some reason. I don't know why, but like the ski resort, the people who found me, something to do with the medics, there's like certain parts of the records that like we don't have access to. So like I only know what happened when I got to the hospital in Denver, essentially.
What happened there?
Well, basically, you know, my ego just got me into a little trouble was kind of what happened. Like, I was living in Colorado at the time, and my family was in town for like we were skiing. And I was just, it's like embarrassing to admit, but I was like annoyed that no one could keep up with me on the slopes. I was like, oh, these fuckers, they don't know how to like ski hard like I do. You know, the world smacked me down, smacked my ego down.
Yeah.
So I was by myself, like on like a kind of back slope or whatever. And I remember thinking before it happened, like, I'm going too fast. This is going to end poorly. Yeah. I was like, I'm losing control.
Yeah.
I remember, and I don't remember like the actual day of the accident. I remember like the day before I had been like just being really risky. And I was like, I think I'm losing control, but I like couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
And so what's kind of odd is that I remember, so I ran into a tree, jaw first. No one saw it happen, but that's kind of the theory, just based on like the injuries that I had, because my jaw was split here, and my C2 was fractured.
Your C2, which is?
It's like a vertebrae. It's like a cervical vertebrae.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah. It's the one that Christopher Reeves like was paralyzed by. So I was like just a contour away from
being paralyzed.
Completely paralyzed. And And I remember, this is so odd. Just, it's an odd feature of like kind of memory and adrenaline. But like, I remember waking up slightly in the helicopter and like just moaning. And they realized I was kind of conscious and were asking me all these questions, but I couldn't really answer. I was just kind of like moaning.
Yeah.
And then it went black for like weeks. So like it's very odd that I have this like one sliver of a memory of being in the helicopter.
And then that's
and then
it.
nothing. And then I remember like having my ass wiped by a nurse. You know what I mean? Like just the most lovely things that you could possibly remember from like
the
your
experience.
weeks of like being in the hospital. Yeah.
And then you were in the hospital for
2 weeks, I think.
And then you can't remember anything of that apart from your ass getting wiped.
Yeah.
Lovely.
You know, interesting experience. Everyone should have it at least once.
Oh, yeah. Humbling, I bet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it wasn't a nurse. It was my stepmom, actually, who I remember wiping my ass, which is even better.
Yeah. That's real humbling.
It was very humbling, yeah.
And then you sort of woke up, started going about your life again.
Yeah, it was miraculous, actually. Like, from my understanding, while I was unconscious, it was a bit of like, they didn't know what state I would be in when I woke up, really. So it was kind of like potentially, like they're telling my parents, like potentially your child is a vegetable. Like they couldn't really like assess the damage until I woke up, I think. And so they were just kind of like waiting for me to, just like waiting to see how I would kind of come to. And like, look at me now.
Look at you now, yeah.
I'm talking. I'm like, I pretty much, one day, I pretty much, like my personality came back, which is what everybody told me. They were like, there was a while where you were conscious and you were just kind of like laying there and like mumbling and like weren't really there. But then one day, it was the day after, no, I don't remember exactly when it was, but like the actual date, but they just said like, I started being able to have conversations and like my personality like came back.
Yeah.
I don't know what switched, and maybe it was just like the certain levels of like healing had occurred to where like more of my cognition was accessible or something.
Yeah. Or maybe that was, I guess your body also like prioritizes what's important to repair. So maybe it's like, okay, cool, we've repaired.
Yeah.
The rest of the night it's time to like get the cognition and
I was also just right on the edge of like so many things being tragic, like my vertebrae being like just barely fractured, not enough to be like completely paralyzed. My jaw being like just not bad enough to where I didn't have to wear a halo, like those like wire cages around your face. Essentially, they were gonna put one on me, but my mom like basically like physically fought the doctor about it. That's the story I'm told about it, and was like, "You're not gonna put my child in a cage." So I was just like lucky enough to just kind of like slip through all of the cracks, all of the like horrendous cracks I could have fallen into. I just,
you sort of
slipped through and survived.
That is that's rough. And then when you came back, did people notice anything different about you, or did you notice anything different about yourself, which is sort of I think the latter will probably be more difficult to sort of recognize. But when you sort of came back to it, did people notice, like, did parts of your personality change? Did parts of like, who you were as a human, sort of?
I would say immediately no. I remember a lot of people being like, you just experienced something life-changing, and kind of expecting it to change me and kind of expecting me to be different, and being like, I don't know, like, I don't remember all that. Like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like, I have like another story about kind of like what crossing over felt like, I guess, or like, I don't even know if it was crossing over, but just there was kind of like a spiritual experience of like, kind of like my spirit deciding whether or not I wanted to die or not. It was like this moment of feeling like I had a choice. Like, do you want to kind of call it, or like, do you want another chance? And I remember being like very sure that I wanted another chance, but that memory didn't come back until like months after the accident, which was interesting. So like people were like, well, you just had this like incredible life-changing experience. And I just felt like maybe were expecting me to change, but it wasn't immediate. Like it took time. It took like months and years for like for me to really like recognize what I went through, you know? And I think like over time, what I realized was like, I had a chance to just like end it. Like my spirit could have moved on. My spirit had a chance to like
call it a day.
Try again, you know, like try another body and like see how it goes there. But having that memory of like, no, like I want to like see this one through, like that is I think the thing that is stuck with me the most, and that has like kind of that like some of the change from the accident has kind of oriented around. That's like I'm pretty sure now that like I want to be me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that like I'm happy being myself.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing to walk around feeling, you know?
And to be sort of sure
yeah, to just be like, yeah, I want to be Lana. You know?
Yeah.
Like my like spirit wants to be Lana.
And how did that memory sort of come back? Was it?
I was driving.
You were driving.
It was very dramatic. It was like so dramatic. I remember I was driving in the rain. It was like thundering, and I can like picture it like exactly as the moment happened. I was like getting on the highway on like the Lake Travis, like intersection of Mopac and Austin. And it just like hit me suddenly, and I just immediately started bawling, and I had to like pull over. I had to like immediately exit and pull over, and I just was like bawling. The memory just like hit me all of a sudden, and it was like this memory of the white light, you know. Everybody talks about the white light. And that there was like almost like a council of like angels or something who I was like pleading to. And it was almost like heavenly court or something. Like, all right, you know, next case coming in, they have the files. They're like, okay, we got a spirit here, like is gonna maybe come over. Like, what do you want? Like, plead your case or whatever. And I was like, let me back in. Like, I want back in.
That's hilarious. What do the creatures look like?
They look like this, like straight angels.
It's
like,
just angels, yeah.
Yeah. The viewers. They look like, and you know, could have been like DMT release, or like I haven't necessarily made a definitive statement about like what is the origin of that like memory. Was it some real like kind of spiritual council that I was like projected up into, or was it a feature of kind of like a chemical release in my brain? I don't know, but like what I have the subjective experience of the memory, and it's like valuable to me. It's like pertinent to me, you know. It felt kind of like you know that scene in Harry Potter when he dies and he's like at the train station with Dumbledore. You know what I'm talking about?
When
at the very end, when like Voldemort, I think Voldemort killed, like they kill each other or something.
Yeah.
And then there's like a white
Okay.
space, and he's with Dumbledore, and Voldemort's like a like sniveling little like maggot on the ground. It had like a similar feeling of that.
Similar feel of that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is it's a lot. It's a lot for someone to experience before they turn 20.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then sort of people, and then do you think that experience within itself, that's when you sort of started to, I guess, make sense of what happened, or
The memory?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that gave me a lot of, like I said, like that was kind of like an orienting experience of like how the rest of the way I processed the experience was like oriented around. But I also like kind of remember feeling like I expected it to change me more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I expected like, I like judged myself of like, should I be like more
Yeah, right.
like transformed by this, you know, because it was like I was still a teenager, like
Yeah.
I still like was an idiot, like, and still like just like went to college and like did normal idiotic shit.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Like, am I supposed to be like enlightened in some way?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
after
no,
this,
that's what I was thinking. Because is there
Yeah.
like a pressure, like after?
Yeah, there was a pressure,
there was
but
a
like
pressure to be this like enlightened person now that you've like experienced death or whatever.
I think only forms of me feeling that was kind of self-imposed, you know, of like, I mean, there were some people, like my mom has like she's like involved in a lot of spiritual communities, and so like a lot of her friends would just be like really like, wow, like invested in the story, and like you must have, you know, seen a lot, and like think that it gave me some special powers, and I just kind of remember being like, well, I don't know, like
You could have played out. You could have become a leader. You could have become.
I know, but that's the problem with all of this also, and I feel like you know this about me, that like I have like a cult leader kind of tendency, maybe, that who knows, could come out someday.
In your later years, you might become some sort of guru shaman.
Yeah.
I would not.
Be careful.
Yeah, seriously. Who knows? I might join.
Be skeptical of anything I say.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I feel. I mean, to be honest, I feel like I've sort of just brought you on just to tell your story because
Yeah.
I've you know, honestly, sort of from when we met, I was like, wow, this is sort of I don't know. Sometimes there's like just stories just like worth telling, and you've had such a sort of like varied life that you know, it's just a unique within itself, but so many different experiences in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I think it's made you like a really mature person, and really like a sort of grounded in the fact that no matter how much you experience in life, that we're all still sort of like fragile humans, and we still have our blind spots, no matter how much we sort of experience. But sort of being aware of those blind spots, I guess, is kind of part of growing up and becoming enlightened or whatever, you know.
Yeah. I think also like there's something about having like, I guess, there's something about having intense experiences where like, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, of like you can kind of choose how you're gonna deal with it in a way, and like especially when it relates to like your identity, and like so to have experiences like, especially as a kid, that kind of like pull on your developing sense of identity, because like the cult thing mixed with also like living with my dad, who like wasn't involved in a cult, was like there's this developmental part of like there's this confusion about like, well, who like am I, you know, like what is the world, like I was getting mixed signals about like what the moral universe I existed inside of was, and like what reality was, and I think that was like really disorienting. And what you can choose to do with like kind of like experiences that afterwards are like disorienting to you is like almost try to like choose to step outside of them and see them as like separate from you, and being like, that is like some thing that I went through, but there's like a part of me that's not related to that. Do you know what I mean? And like you learn how to identify more with like things that are authentic, like things that are just like, there's like a natural pulse, like an impulse within each person that's like organic to them, that can get like funneled into different external things. And it's really hard to like kind of tell what the difference is between those sometimes, of like what's like authentic and organic to me, and what is like what parts of me are kind of just getting pulled by the outside world. But but having so many like weird experiences of just getting pulled in different directions, like has helped me just like take a step back in a way and try and orient more around like, well, what's like, yeah, what's the thing that's in like in here? Like, what's the thing that's like, I really wish there was a better word than authentic, but like, I think impulse is probably the next best thing in a way of like, what's the like, what is your heart sing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and also I guess, as much as it is an impulse, I do also think that the impulses can also be influenced by the outside desires as well. So I think there is a bit of a push and pull there as well, where it's sort of there's a crossover. But I do know what you mean. You know, we all have our things that we're just naturally interested in, you know, for whatever reason. And for some reason it sort of works, you know, and how sort of like society, you know, works, as in like, you know, some people just become carpenters and some people become doctors, and there's just natural pulls to different things, and sort of, I guess there's, I mean, and it's not because, you know, it's like, is it because, like, you know, like, someone's like, I want to be a carpenter, or is it because society needs more carpenters right now, so I'm going to become a carpenter, and that's going to be like a satisfying thing?
You know, I have a strong opinion about this.
Okay.
That like, it's potentially non-conventional, but like, I do tend to think that like, we are all who we are, and that there's a large part of it that's kind of unchangeable, and that like, there's a way in which you can change, like the way that you express who you are can like be different. Like, you can express your desire for carpentry through like, you can make cabinets, or you could do construct, you know, like there's different things.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a crude example, but like, just like the more time that goes on, I think we actually can't, I think we all are something, and we can't really fundamentally change what that something is. And that it's like, you just kind of are who you are. You can change how that thing gets expressed, or how that thing relates to the environment, or how it relates to other people. But like, the core of like what a person's like spirit is, I think doesn't really, I think it is what it is.
Yeah. So are you kind of sort of saying it doesn't, I guess it's like, whenever like people's personalities are their jobs type of thing. You know, is it when, regardless if you're a carpenter or a doctor, because those are the examples we were going with, but that's sort of like, the medium is not, the medium doesn't really matter in so much of who you are, because whatever you do, you'll still be that entity. And sort of the way you express your sort of the way you express who you are isn't necessarily as important or vital, I guess. Whether you become a carpenter or a doctor doesn't necessarily change who you are, but it's just rather an expression of who you are. Yeah.
And I tend to think that it is kind of mechanistic in the sense of like, it just has to do with the way that like our neural circuitry is laid out, to where like certain information gets processed and like stored and received and retrieved in our brains in certain ways. And like, people have certain kind of like dispositions for things. And I think that there's like I tend to think that there's like kind of biological correlates for like the reason that those things are the way they are, like why we just have this thing that's just like, that's just who you are. Like an example is like kinks, like how men are more likely to develop like sexual kinks. And and there's like a kind of running theory about it, is that it has to do with like different things being associated with like the early wiring of like sexual circuitry. So like, for example, if the first time you have like a sexual impulse, someone's wearing red lipstick, or there's like, you're wearing something that has a lot of zippers on it, or like something that can just be kind of randomly associated, can become like associated within your neural circuitry. That's like, oh, well, now that's related to my sexuality or whatever. And so I think like there's a lot of parts of us that are just like wired within us, either by experience or for whatever reason. And that like we can express it differently, but for the most part, you just is what it is. And a lot of that wiring, like through developmental time, like there's different critical stages in like the development of the nervous system, and like kind of the earlier it is, like the more kind of powerful it is in your system. So like your neural circuitry starts being wired like in the womb, and there's like different signals you're getting in the womb about like how much stress cortisol and like hormone exposure that you're getting in the womb. Like all of that's influencing the way that you're being wired. And then as you get older, that's going to like express out into who you are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It sort of starts way earlier than what we think, basically. Yeah.
And that it just relates to my theory about like, we are who we are. We can't really change it. And there's there's plasticity involved in the nervous system, but for the most part, there's also parts of us that just is who you is. And I think that's kind of actually like a relief to acknowledge.
Yeah.
You know, it's like kind of something kind of peaceful about it. Just like, yeah, I just am who I am.
Yeah, of course. And then I guess a nice way to like segue into the next step of the conversation is, you know, the feeling of self and identity, you know, it's just like, I feel like, I mean, it feels like more now than ever, you know, people have a lot of issues with the self and identity, and you know, what they associate themselves with, who they associate themselves with, what does that mean for them as an individual, and how they slot themselves into whatever part of society. You know, like why do you think so many people have like, I guess, identity crisis and in today's age?
Why do people have identity crises? Well, I've had plenty in my life, definitely, and I don't think that they're over. Yeah, I think it's like a trap that's really easy to fall into.
Yeah.
Why do people have identity crises? I mean, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Why do you think people have identity crises?
Why do I think people have identity crises? I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult for me to like answer this question on like on a level more than myself.
Yeah.
Because
so when was your last identity crisis?
I don't know. Like, I don't really know. I kind of mine's sort of just like a constant one, where
you're more of observational. You observe others' identity crises.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, I observe myself as well, because for me, it's like my sort of, I guess, problem with identity is I feel pressure to find my niche. You know what I mean? I feel pressure to just find like my niche and just to do that. But yeah, I haven't found my niche.
And does that feel like a crisis a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. It feels like, wow, like I need to find this thing before I'm 30 or something. You know, there feels like there's pressure, and I don't know how much of that pressure is through society, and I don't know how much of that pressure comes through nature, just our sort of our human need just to progress and do something significant in the world to sort of progress humanity, from that side of thing. Because, like it's good to have a niche in a sense that, you sort of become a master of something, and you can really progress in that field, and you can really push society to sort of in that field, whatever. But then I also recognize that there's positives in having your finger in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because then you can sort of make connections that other people wouldn't see. So I guess for me, I don't know if it's an identity crisis, just sort of like making sense of what I'm doing.
Does that feel like what you're doing and who you are like the same? Or do you compartmentalize those?
No, I think, I think they're sort of the same for me. Like what I do, because I don't really, the reason why I say that is I don't really know how to differentiate them, because everything that I do is who I am, like my job is who I am. What I eat is who I am, exercising, I don't know, everything, like socializing. And I think I find it difficult to sort of separate these things, because I know, for a lot of people, it's like they really try to dissociate, thank you, themselves from their work. Like that's not them type of thing. But I don't know how
people do that. I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know how that. That doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I don't know. I sort of just said a bit of nothing there. But.
No. No, I was actually having a conversation with a friend about kind of this topic last night, like the difference between people who are able to kind of compartmentalize. Basically, what it is like compartmentalize their relationship to like the means of their life, like in like a
Sorry, say that again.
Like people who are able to compartmentalize themselves from like the means of production in their lives, to use like a political term, like the way that they make money, essentially the way that they like have a relationship to surviving in the world and with their work. It's like how both of us were saying, like, I don't really understand people who can like just be like, oh, that's what I do for work. But like who I am and my identity and these other things I'm exploring myself is like separate from that. I just find that like, I don't know, just find it odd. I find it's like impossible for me to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I kind of see it, from my parents and stuff like that. That's and like sort of older people that I know that sort of they've sort of just fallen into some line of work just because they also for them was find a job. That's.
I was gonna say, I think some of it has to do with opportunity.
Yeah.
Where it's like some people don't have the opportunity to like express themselves with their work, or like for them to have this like deeper core relationship to like the means of production in their life. So it probably makes sense that like in the West and in the environment that we're in, there's just a bigger opportunity for people to really make their lives viable by being who they are. And that potentially could lend itself to like just like some level of anxiety about like, I don't know, about you're saying about like this identity crisis of like finding who is it, how do I like best express and like find the containers to like be myself,
Yeah, and also there's a type of like, especially like in the sort of environment that we live in. London, big cosmopolitan city where it sort of feels like everyone's making a life out of their identity and who they are, and I don't know. There's a weird pressure around it now.
Yeah, I'm also not one of those people who's like, oh well, it's a privilege thing, like it's opportunity. So like it's just a matter of like we just have all this privilege now. It's like well, no, we have this opportunity, and like it. I think some of the pressure might just come from like acknowledging the opportunity that exists and being like, wow, I don't want to spoil this opportunity.
Oh yeah. I feel very much that way.
Yeah. And it's not like, roll your eyes, like it's just the privilege. It's like, no, it's actually like, it's a waste. It's a waste if it's not kind of catalyzed and like.
Yeah, definitely.
Worked on,
I feel that way about a lot of things.
Yeah.
The fact that I have an opportunity, in many different aspects of my life, it feels like if I don't try to make something out of that opportunity, it just feels like a waste. Yeah. Obviously, it's impossible to capitalize on all opportunities, but there's therefore a pressure to capitalize on all opportunities. You know what I mean?
You can't though.
You can't. Yeah,
you can't capitalize on all of them. Like, I think it does come down to a matter of like, I just hate how pulled I feel to use the word authentic. To keep using that fucking word.
Yeah, it's kind of ruined, isn't it? The word. Marketing teams have ruined
it's
it.
like what else I call it? No, but I think within that there's like a discernment. You can't capitalize on every opportunity, so like there needs to be a certain level of discernment about like which ones.
What's discernment mean?
Discernment is like being able to discern, being able to kind of tell, to kind of
which one's worth it.
Yeah, to kind of assess the different opportunities, and assess which ones are going to be like advantageous and which ones are not. Because when there is like infinite possibility, like that's also not a productive feeling, I don't think. To just be like, oh, there's just so much opportunity, like I could go any direction. It's almost like you need some level of like
limit.
Yeah, like you need structure and limitation. I'm a big fan of like limitation in a way. Structure and limitation to kind of like guide you to one place. I don't know, I just think about like a pinball or something. It's like if a pinball is just like rolling down a flat sheet, it could just go anywhere and it's not gonna like, the probability of it ending up the specific place that you want it to end up is low if the pinball is just like running down a flat sheet. But if there's like terrain on it for the ball to roll down with it, there's this kind of limitation of like, it can't really go there, it can't really go there, then the probability of like ending up in a specified place is higher when you have like limitations.
I also feel like just looking through my past experiences, and connecting it to creativity, I feel like in moments in my life, like in work with cameras and stuff, whenever I've had the most freedom, whatever, as in like, cameras and stuff, and I can sort of get what I want. No, the product's been good and whatever, but whenever I've been the most limited, like no budget, blah, 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 like not that much freedom per se, that's when I've been my most creative. Whenever I've had whenever I've been imposed with the most amount of limits and the most amount of like, just limits. That's when I feel like I've produced my best work, because you're sort of pushed to you're really pushed to like solve these problems. It can be super satisfying,
I think we're coming back around to finding an answer to your question about identity crisis in a way, which is like, I think we are in a social environment where possibility feels endless. Like, especially for, I don't know. I just think especially from my vantage point as like being a young person in the time periods that I was a young person, it just felt like I'm 27 now. So I don't think I was affected by like the limitation of COVID as much as younger people might have been, but that like have had this felt experience before where like, well, there's so much possibility. You can be anybody. And especially being on the internet, like you can really be anybody. And you can be an entirely fake person. Like, they're like catfishing. Like, you don't even have to like look the way you do, or you can create avatars for yourself. And there's just this almost like infinite landscape of like identity that you can choose. And I think probably there's not enough limitation. There's not enough limitation on like on guiding people to like following the thing that is true about them. or there's not enough, like, I don't know if there's enough incentive for, I don't know if incentive is the right word, but like emphasis on like, no, you are actually something. You're not only like, I don't think about it like a stem cell thing. Like you're not just full of infinite potential. Like there's almost a delusion about thinking that we have infinite potential, you know? Like, no, we actually can't. Like our personalities and our experiences and our like circumstances are actually limitations on our lives that like we're way better off to acknowledge and accept and like operate within and be creative within and problem solve within than we are to try and like catapult ourselves through the landscape of like infinite potential, you know? And then I think it sometimes feels like it sometimes feels like you're capable of doing that, especially in America. Like, oh, you can just be famous on the internet for like doing whatever. Like, it makes you feel like you're missing out on something by not catapulting yourself through the landscape of infinite potential. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think it's detrimental that we sort of there's a sort of society tells people that, hey, you can be absolutely anything?
Yes. Back to my love of structure and love of limitation, like love of like Saturnian things, like Saturn in astrology is like this. It's like the kind of gatekeeper and like the limit maker and like the taskmaster. It's like the taskmaster of the cosmos. And without like Saturnian energy in the world, it just is chaos. Like it's chaos in the way of like truth being lost within the chaos. Do you know what I mean? Because there's nothing kind of tempering you back to the truth and to reality, and like delusion can just draw you endlessly elsewhere. And I feel like that in a way has been an aspect of like our social environment. I do think like the COVID situation and just the past couple of years we've seen more of an influx of like Saturnian energy, limitation bringing people back down. And like you hear people talking about how like the lockdown was actually like such an amazing, actually like productive time of their lives of like, well, yeah, I was just stuck at home and like the only thing I had to look at myself. I had to focus on myself, and I couldn't avoid myself. I couldn't live within delusion or whatever. That's exactly what I mean about like Saturnian energy being actually a catalyst for creativity and like truth. You know, I gotta take a whiz.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
Should we talk about your identity crisis?
I feel like it's inevitable. I was waiting for you to talk about it.
Yeah, of course. Continuing with your interesting life experiences.
Yeah.
You went on the big T to testosterone.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. For how long?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, I still take a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just the juice.
Yeah.
I just like to know I can like do a pull up and like do a push up, and I just like to have a little edge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And how? Okay. So, I started about 2 years ago. What sort of was the initial moment where you were like, this is a possibility I want to take?
You know, like I've been having a lot of just reflection about my experience like with cross-sex hormones. Like I've been thinking about it a lot and trying to process it a lot because I've been slowly going off of them. So like I probably started lowering my dose when I moved here to London, or a little bit before. And now I'm just taking like an insanely minuscule amount. And so like through the process of like kind of reducing my dose, I've just been like processing the whole experience a lot more and finding a lot of anger about it, to be honest. Like finding a lot of just anger about like the circumstances that led me into thinking it was a good idea, kind of. And I think the anger is just only one dimension of the entire kind of like experience. And so it's been useful to like tap into a little bit of the anger. But also in the processing, I've been trying to really identify what it was, like what, like why, like how did I end up there? And I don't even really have an answer.
Because I remember
Do you know what I
asking
mean?
you, and then you sort of skimmed past the. Because I remember thinking about this the first time I asked you,
Yeah.
but like, you know, like kind of what made you do it, and you're like, oh, you know, like body modification, and I'm sure that's definitely part of it.
For sure.
But
Curiosity, like a huge problem for me is just like unending curiosity. But again, that's just only one dimension of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like a one-dimensional answer about like why.
What did you feel anger towards?
Now or then?
And both, I guess. Like
Yeah.
more now. What my question was, but
I think probably a holistic answer I can give you is like social environment, like being kind of like pulled by my social environment and like not being a bit dissociated from myself and like being a bit dissociated from like what felt true and right to me, which I think is a really common experience for a lot of people of just like being dissociated from themselves. Like I can point to a lot of experiences developmentally, like throughout my childhood. Like I think a great one is the cults, like just growing up in these like really different social environments where there's no like strong core of like, this is who you are, this is the world that you live in, this is how you fit into the world you live in. Like it was all just chaos. Like, you know, the idea, like the world that I was reared into was chaos. And like I think that's challenging for any like organism to try to develop their like cerebral cortex. And you know, like those are like really important periods of time where you're like your neural circuitry is like being wired. And so dissociation is a huge reason, I think, like just being dissociated from my own body, from my own feelings, which I think is where the truth of who you are kind of exists. Like I think it does lie in like the signals that your body gives you, you know? And I just didn't have I didn't like speak the language of like communicating with my body and with my like feelings. I couldn't, like the cord was cut. I couldn't talk to it and I couldn't receive messages from it. And so being in a social environment where I guess like a social environment of infinite potential kind of is part of it. But also a social environment that was really, this has to do specifically with like where I was in life, but like that was confusing, challenging of gender stereotypes with like an undoing of sexual identity. So it's like, well, if you don't want to be subject to misogyny, you can't be a woman. Like that was, I think, subconsciously a message that I was receiving from like my social environment. And I was like, no, man, I don't like being treated like I'm stupid. I don't like being treated like I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't like being smaller than everyone else. Like, and I think I confused that for like, I don't want to be a woman. And a part of the anger I'm starting to feel now is like, well, why can't I just fucking still be a woman who doesn't want to be treated like I'm stupid? Like, what's wrong with me being a woman who doesn't want to be treated like I'm stupid? Or that's like treated in so many other ways that like misogyny subjects us to different things. And so I'm starting to feel this anger about like, why are we confusing those things so much? Why are we confusing like not wanting wanting to end oppressive gender stereotypes with like needing to blur the lines between the sexes? Because like biologically, men and women are different, like for a fucking reason, for like an evolutionary conserved reason that has like unfolded over millions of years of biology. And so I feel I look back and I feel sad about how confused I was, and how I felt like I wasn't aware of this at the time, but like how I felt like I didn't have another option to not being a woman. Like you just hear this like, I'm not a woman, I don't want to be a woman, and it's like for some people that's real. Transsexualism is real. I'm not denying that at all. Like obviously, but I think just speaking for myself, like I didn't feel like there was another option for me to just be like. It's like silly and sad to say, but I just didn't feel like there was an option for me to like be who I was, for me to feel like empowered and like embodied and connected to myself and be a woman. I felt like I had to start at the beginning. I had to become something completely different to be connected to myself. And like, that's kind of sad, you know? I've never like opened up that much about it before.
Yeah.
And so when I started testosterone, it was like, the excitement was mostly like, I'm in charge now. Like, I get to choose who I am. And I thought that was going to mean that I would be connected with myself and that I would know who I was and that I would like be more empowered because I was in charge. I was choosing. I'm going to be like more masculine. I'm going to be like whatever. And in some weird way, it led me to where I am now, which is I do feel connected to myself. I feel like I got the things I wanted out of it, which is kind of counterintuitive, I guess. But it was through a lot of like just self-awareness and like metacognition of the experience that I ended up getting what I needed out of it. But what I needed out of it wasn't to become a man, you know? So yeah, I also like, part of my anger about how these signals are getting confused culturally, the signals of like gender stereotypes and sex stereotypes. On the other side of it makes me feel like, man, someone's got to fucking speak up about this too, you know? Like, I don't want to see other people fall into the same trap because I think like hormones and transition and all that stuff is becoming like hyper normalized and kind
trendy.
of yeah. And I think that like other vulnerable people like me are going to think that that's an option and potentially the only option for them. And there's like lifelong consequences for altering the like steroid sex hormones that circulate through your body. Even now, I don't take it anymore, but like I will have lifelong consequences that I'm just gonna have to live with, you know? Nothing like, I'm lucky I didn't get like a double mastectomy, you know? I had one scheduled.
Really?
Because I was like, I chose this and now I'm gonna have to go for this.
You're going like all in.
Yeah, and it was like, it's like paradoxical because it's like, oh, well, I'm in charge. I get to choose. I'm making all these choices for myself. But still it followed this like very common trajectory of like, you start hormones, you start wearing a binder, you start like dressing a different way, you talk in a different way, and then you get top surgery, and then you're a man or whatever. Like there's this like a trajectory of transition that subconsciously I think I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go do that, whatever, which is not me choosing. That's not authentic. It's authentic to me, you know. So I'm really lucky I didn't go through with it. It was scheduled for September 11th. I remember.
Yeah.
9/11.
Yeah, 9/11.
And I was like,
Doomsday.
and then just I was having dreams about it. I've told you about my prophetic dreams, but like I was having dreams about just like my body and whatever. And my dreams were like, don't do it. And so I canceled it like a week before.
A week before?
Yeah.
Wow, that's how close it was.
Yeah. And that's what I mean about like our body sending us signals, like our body and our emotions, like for whatever reason in my sleep, there was certain chemicals kind of dancing around in my brain that were telling me, don't fucking do it.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah. So like my body was like, that's what I was looking for in a way, is like my body to like have a relationship with what my body's telling me is like true for me. So blah, blah, blah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't remember what the question is at this point. I was sucked in. Do you, I mean, I don't want to make it too dark, but what do you think would have happened if you went through with it?
Heartbreak.
Yeah.
Tragedy. I think it would have been tragic. Yeah, that's a consequence that I don't know if I like would have been able to live with. Do you know what I mean? Like, because once I canceled the surgery, that's when the whole thing started to fall apart. It was those dreams I was having. Like, it was these dreams that I was like breastfeeding a child. And it was telling me like, you're going to be devastated if you can't like feed your child. And then having those dreams, like the whole thing started falling apart. It's like, I don't want the surgery. And like, and I just started feeling like it was my body telling me like, you're female, you know, like, and part of your like biological capacity is childbirth and like, basically creating life itself. Like I just started to feel much more connected, like, oh, my body's actually capable of insanely cool shit, which is like creating an organism. And that is a feature of me being female. And I started to just feel more like appreciative of the fact that my body was capable of that. And I was like, wow, that's actually really fucking cool. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose like the thing that, like the gift that I just am given through the feature of my biology. And so if I had gone through with it, I think I would have lost a part of myself that I would have never been able to recover. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously,
my tits.
yeah, yeah.
You can't really, like, you can get plastic ones, but like,
It's not, yeah.
it's not the same.
Yeah.
You can't like nurture the next generation of life with a plastic implant, you know? So yeah, like connecting with like my like birthing capacity, like I don't know, I was like connecting with like the capability of like my biological features was what kind of snapped me back to reality. And that's why I think that's partially why I have this whole shtick about like, nah, man, we all are something, and we just need to like figure out like we are something, and we can't just like choose infinitely what we are going to be. Like we are somewhat limited by like our biology and the specifics of like what our biology is capable of, you know?
How was your like whole journey through it? Like, I guess through the 2 years of it. And then when you started to like realize it's not for you, how was that met? Just like, yeah, like with the people that you were surrounded with, like.
Well, I took a serious sabbatical from public life once I started to kind of change my mind about it. Because like going back on something that you kind of made a big deal about is a little embarrassing, you know? So like to be public about like, oh, I'm on hormones and I'm doing this thing and blah, 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 feels like, oh, it's like brave that you're like speaking out about it or whatever. But it's like, it wasn't brave because it wasn't true to me. And so to change my mind about that, I felt like, yeah, just embarrassed. It was like a core aspect of that feeling was just embarrassment. So I extracted myself from like the internet and just like I don't know. I started just like really doing my own thing and kind of existing elsewhere, and that's partially why like moving to a new country has felt so good, because I can just like be whatever now. Like I've been a woman in the UK more than the past 5 years of my life. Do you know what I mean? Like I've just been like, yeah, like this is my chance to just like be who I am. But I think throughout those 2 years there was a lot of like just like self-deception about what I was doing, and kind of a lot of like lofty, kind of self-important, like theorizing about like, oh, I'm experimenting, I'm like a body modder. Like the way that I would explain it to myself and to people at the time was just that like I'm experimenting with my own subjectivity, like I'm trying to understand like what features of my own subjective experience are related to like hormone capacities, whatever. I treated it like I was like some like experimental like researcher, which I think is something I do and probably a lot of people do, is like you extract the things that you decide to do into being like, oh, I'm just curious. Like it's for research purposes, you know? Like I do that with like, oh, I'm watching reality TV because it's like, oh, it's like for anthropological study or whatever. So I was extracting like this thing that I was doing to being like, oh, it's just for curiosity, whatever. and it was the self-delusion part of it was like, well, no, but you're also, part of that is also like serious consequences that you're taking on, you know? And I was like denying those consequences. And another part of it was that like I was unwilling to talk to my family about it. So like I shaved my head, my voice dropped, I started like wearing like a chest binder, like didn't say anything to my family. Like it was kind of out of the blue. Like I had really long hair. I was like really feminine, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm experimenting with my subjectivity. Like deal with it. That's what I would say to people. And then with my family, it was just I was unwilling to say anything to them about it. And I think that was another indication to me of like this isn't necessarily real.
I mean, you've said this to me before, so hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth. But
Yeah, go ahead.
no, just that now you're in a part of your life where you feel good. Yeah.
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 I would say so.
Yeah. Do you feel like? I mean, obviously, you speak about the experience like it wasn't like a good thing because you sort of felt like you had no like no other choice almost. But I guess there is a silver lining because you sort of come out on the other side. You sort of took what you want from the experience, and luckily in this case you didn't go through the complete permanent damage.
Thank God.
Yeah. But I guess there's always like a silver lining to these things. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the bit where we sort of touched on about it, the fact that it's sort of like the trendy part of it, the bit where it's becoming, and the socially acceptable bit is, it's not necessarily a bad thing on its own. There's a lot more things that I don't know, should or shouldn't be socially acceptable, but they're definitely worth talking about more. But in some sense, whenever these new ideas become socially acceptable, then there's a thing that comes with it where it's bad to question them. You're almost like not allowed to question them, or if you do, and you give like alternative ideas to that solution, you're a bigot, man. But also like there is the bigot part, but it's almost like you're identified as someone that's like, oh, you don't understand type of thing, which yeah.
Well, it's a bit of that thing we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, which is like the ideology, like the kind of party line becomes larger than like what someone might just intrinsically be feeling about it, where it's like, oh well, no, this is actually how, this is what we've all agreed about this thing, like this is what we've all decided is true now. And if there's like if there's any curiosity or kind of questioning of what that is, it's like, well, no, like we've decided that's wrong. I know you might have that thought, but you're wrong because we've already decided that's wrong. And it's like, it's exactly what I was saying about when there's no room for questioning, when there's no room for kind of exposing hypocrisy, which all of those things can be playful. Like you can expose hypocrisy, you can question things in a really playful way that's not like, like diminutive, I guess. But like, that's what I feel like has happened with like gender ideology, and with a lot of things. Kind of put a target on your, I feel, if I put a target on your back for like talking about it, but like a lot of things now have become that way, where it's like, well, no, we've all agreed that it's this way and it's that way.
Why do you think that is?
Fear of a chaotic universe. Like we're all trying to get on the same page. I think there is a desire to collectivize and to feel like you're a part of something larger. But in reality, like the world is infinitely complex. And so to organize collectively in an infinitely complex universe with infinitely complex individuals trying to participate in that group, I think it's just like almost too much to handle.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, let's let's
make these assumptions
Yeah.
and
let's make these rules. And I think it's different. I think the kind of limitation and structure of that is different than like the limitation and structure I was talking about earlier, of like limitation and structure that gives the opportunity for creativity, versus limitation and structure that's going to like limit like curiosity and creativity. You know what I mean?
there are
It's
different
two sides of the same
coin. Yeah, I see what you mean with that. Yeah, it's complicated in its entirety. Yeah.
Do you have that experience of like people, like, I don't know, maybe not explicitly saying it, but like you can tell someone thinks that you're like ignorant or like bigoted about things? Do you ever feel that way?
Oh yeah, for sure. I have felt in certain in certain places where people sort of just assume things just based on how you look. You know, like a big guy with a shaved head. It's
Kind of a meatball.
It's just like I don't know. I've been in certain circumstances where people sort of think you're someone. But I guess that sort of goes with everything. I remember being in a gay club once, and I was in the smoking area, and this guy just sort of started an argument with me, and was like, well, telling me how like I shouldn't be here, and I'm in his space, and I was like, bad. I'm like well friendly. I'm buying drinks. I'm like trying to
sure.
like what? Like I'm not
infiltrating.
I'm not infiltrating. I'm here with my friends. Like,
well, how did he know you weren't gay? I mean,
he smelt it.
Yeah,
he smelt it. No, it's true. Do you know what? Yeah, hot take. Gay guys can smell straight guys from a mile away. Yeah. Yeah. I remember. Do you know what? I remember going to this bar club place. It was my mate Johnny, who's gay, and it was his birthday, and we went to this place. And to be honest, he doesn't like places that like there's just too much. There's not much of a balance of like gay and straight and whoever else. Yeah. But this place we walked in, and it was an absolute sausage fest. There was like, honestly, it must have been like 300 guys and maybe like 2 girls.
And it's all gay.
It's all gay. And I walked in, and I was like, oh my days. I
would think you would be like a big target in a place like
oh my days. Yeah. I was getting touched up. Like literally, it was crazy. I was like,
that surprised me.
Yeah, they were yeah. I was it was kind of like, I don't know if it was like a confidence boost. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Yeah.
Well, because the thing that happens also in like I think gay male environments now is that like within, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but like within like straight relations, there's so much more of like a safeguard against men treating women that way. Like there's just a lot of cultural projection about like how men can't treat women that way, but like you see that a lot less. You see a lot of those like safeguards, a lot less of those safeguards in like the gay community. So like I've never walked into somewhere where I'm like getting touched by men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like just the kind of social regulation, the unofficial social regulations in like a gay male environment,
they're different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lead to you getting touched.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a difference because there's all there's always the physical side of things where it's the part where you feel threatened, right? You feel like
sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't feel threatened.
Yeah.
And it's not like it wasn't creepy.
You can handle yourself.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah.
And also like it wasn't, I don't know, like it wasn't creepy. It was playful, I guess. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like cool, like getting my bum touched by someone. It's like, wow. I play sports, like we slap each other's bums all the time.
No, I've definitely been touched before where I'm like, no harm, no foul. Where you can feel it was just playful.
Yeah.
But then there's an energy.
There's an ick. Ick about you get about certain people that.
Or like, okay, the catcalling thing. Also, maybe hot take here, but like, I kind of like it. But there's an energy, and it is this like stereotype thing of like, well, if they're cute, then you like it, and if they're not cute, it's like, yeah, duh, like fucking duh. Like if I don't know, like sometimes I can be flattered by someone like making a comment to me on the street. Sorry, like
yeah.
But then sometimes there is like an ick factor. There's like a kind of a intention you can feel behind it that feels like kind of exploitative.
Do you think you feel you've do you feel like that opinion has changed in the last like 3 years or for you?
No, I think my acceptance of my true feelings has changed.
Yeah. Like where before you
I think I denied a lot of my own feelings about my body and identity, and obviously I denied a lot of shit. Like and what really felt authentic.
Authentic
to me.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of denial about like, because there's also a lot of denial about, oh well, women are oppressed by catcalling, so I can't like being catcalled because then I'm like an enemy of the women's movement or whatever if I like that. But like, who cares? Like, there's so much more value in me just like acknowledging how I feel and just speaking the truth about it than there is about like trying to hold on to this like political line about something.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I've always sort of tried to like phrase this exact feeling where it's is what you said about, you know, like in like a social setting or societal pressures tell you that like I you know, I'm a woman, I shouldn't like catcalling.
Yeah.
But then there's, you know, other stuff where it's like you know, if I don't know, like, I remember like a mate of a mate type of thing saying that someone, and it was a conversation and about how like difference between men and women and how women are more caring, you know, and how just and she really didn't like that.
Bigot.
Yeah, it's like what? Like women are more caring.
Well, there's like this. There's a rejection of anyone. There's a fear about anyone being reductive. Oh, you're being reductive about women aren't. You can't say women are one way or the other. Like you're just being reductive. You're putting women into a box. Right, it's like. Yeah, but like, what about like the force of statistics in the universe, which is that like, there's like certain kind of chemical neurocircuit like things that are happening to where women's behavior is a certain way. Yeah. Statistically.
Yeah. Well, crazy.
Yeah. So what happened in this conversation?
No, nothing. It's kind of because it's the same thing as what you're expressing. Because I don't feel like, because also I don't think she really believed it as well. So it's like kind of like it's that thing where it's like, to be honest, most people we all have like some sort of natural intelligence that's just sort of just in us. We sort of, you know, we can you know, we process so much information on a day-to-day basis. We're all, you know, fairly smart in different ways, and we can answer lots of questions about how we go about things, and one thing we're all sort of not experts in, but like is humans, people, we assess ourselves all the time, we assess our friends all the time, and we assess, you know, like all humans that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So I feel like we're very good at sort of just like you know, like social cues and anything socially. So I feel like whenever like someone expresses a view, you can sort of tell, it's like, is that actually your view, or is that just like...
Yeah, it's intuition.
Yeah, right.
Like, I guess you could brand all of those like kind of processes that are occurring with social cues as like you have an intuitive sense of... Yeah, exactly. Is that your intuition, or is that just
or do you just, are you saying that because you feel like you have to say it?
Yeah.
Or you feel like you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
believe in a certain way?
And you can't, like, it's so impossible to call someone out for that, like, to argue with them about it. Like,
Yeah,
you don't really feel that way, man.
yeah, no, because then that taps into some, like
Yeah.
you don't wanna anger the ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's when all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I mean, I guess it's, we sort of started this conversation from, how it was about the catcalling of how you feel now to back then. So
I think I always liked it.
Yeah.
And I think I missed it when I was a man.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, one of the things I really missed, like, I mean, I never like passed as a man. I was like, I looked like one of those like kind of androgynous they them. So it's kind of the furthest I ever got. I'm also 5'2", so like, and my body's like naturally very curvaceous. So there's only so far I really could have gone with it.
Yeah.
But I missed like, just like the guy at the corner store winking at you, or like, or just like a little twinkle in your eye you get from someone walking by. Like, I just miss those little like moments of like engagement between men and women. And I think I felt like I was not supposed to like the kind of flirtation in public life, but it's like, no, I do like it. Like that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like alive in the world, and like I'm engaging with people. And I think like kind of flirtatious interaction between men and women statistically is, I think people actually want that. I think people enjoy that. And I'm not saying it's like kind of overt sexual interaction, but just like, I'm not a big fan of like the kind of like a sterilized social environment where we're not allowed to kind of like just be honest about those impulses that we have, And I was very aware of like, I noticed that I was like, it's awful to admit, but it's like, I noticed like I lost some like level of like privilege of like, oh, if I didn't have 25 cents, usually the guy's like, don't worry about it. Or like, little, or like, oh, I can't, my card's not working at the gas station, so I'm like, let me buy, like, just like little things like that were happening less often to me, and I missed it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I'll just be honest about it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the privilege of like of being able to like bat my eyelashes and get things. I'm sorry.
You're excused.
It's just the truth. And I'm not saying that like I'm like depending on that everywhere I go, but just like it's
part of the experience.
When little things like that would happen in my life, it made me feel good,
Where do we leave the conversation?
I was saying I like being catcalled.
Great.
I like men being creepy to me.
Great. Yeah. I think that will be a real empowering message to all the women out there.
I'm sure plenty of people will be like, yeah, I agree.
Oh no, that's the thing. Like, the thing is, it's not about fucking. Again, it's just we're talking about the same thing. I feel, but like, it's never just A or B, right? It's not
for sure. Yeah,
it's just like a lot of these conversations sort of tackle sort of the same problem, and I feel kind of the medium of podcasts sort of. I guess the reason why podcasts have become so popular is because I think just people got sick and tired of like
reductive messaging
in the media, where it was like it's either this or that, and I feel like that's exactly what podcasts all podcasts tend to just sort of like lean on, is the bits in between the A and the B. Like there's a lot there.
You kind of a little over here,
just swim through the alphabet. And
no, I think that I've thought this. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a prophet or anything, but like I remember when I first started listening to the Joe Rogan Experience when I was like 17. Like I was listening to it way back in the day. I remember being like, podcasting is like the media of the future. Like this is going to be like the rock and roll of our generation, just in like terms of how rock and roll like revolutionized like teens in the 50s, like, oh my god, Elvis like shaking his pelvis, Elvis in his pelvis like on TV, like changed that generation of young people and their consciousness. I think like podcasting like is doing that for like the new generation.
Well, look, I mean, me personally, like I can fully admit like Joe Rogan has been
important for you.
Yeah, like it's
Me
true.
too.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
in
just
denial.
like
I love Joe Rogan.
It's kind of like it almost feels a bit lame to say, but like I don't know why it does, because like I think so much of the positive things in my life right now have a connection one way or another back to Joe Rogan. And like obviously not
Honestly,
to give
I think I could probably make a similar case for myself.
yeah. And like and it's not him directly as a person, but like
it's the container he creates for
right, it's the
information
medium
to
itself.
spread.
Yeah. It's the medium itself.
Definitely.
And like the people that he's had on, and the people I've ended up following because of him, and the way conversations can be had, and just like just the like this new version of conversation. It's not even a new version of conversation, because we've always had long form conversations, but not being put in front of,
Not accessible.
not accessible. Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
go on. Let's dive into this.
Oh, I had another comment about Joe, but I forgot
Okay.
what it was.
What's this thing? Train all day.
No, it's a Joe Rogan podcast by night or something like that. Train all day, Joe Rogan podcast.
That's
by
it. Train by day, Joe Rogan bus by night.
night. Well, hey, if it wasn't for Joe Rogan, I wouldn't be in Sedona giving Randall Carlson cookies, telling him about my theory of evolution.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't know about Randall Carlson.
No, you wouldn't know.
So
Hey man, he's the guy.
he lives
He's
in my
a prophet.
hometown.
Do you know what?
You know he lives in my hometown. I'm dying to meet him.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen one day.
Yeah, I hope it does.
Yeah.
Do you know what I was thinking? I was like, wow, like, you know, when like celebrities die and stuff, you know, and you feel like somewhat connected to them. I was like, when Joe Rogan dies, I'm going to be devastated. I'm going to be like bawling.
No, but he's so on the tip of like every possible like longevity hack. Like, I don't know. I just feel like he's so into like human optimization that like we won't lose him for a while.
Yeah. He's going to be out there for a
He'll
while.
be around.
But the thing is this, when you listen to, I've thought about this where it's like, when I listen to someone so much, right? And it's happened with a few podcasters, him, Lex Fridman.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've heard your voice more than some of my friends.
Yeah.
Like I recognize, I know you better than I do some of my friends.
It feels that way.
It feels that way. Yeah.
And you might.
And yeah, genuinely, I genuinely might. Yeah. And it's a weird thing where
Kind of like misplaced intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I also feel like, you know, like with people like him, with just podcasts in general, people that have a lot of hours and hours of them on the internet of like real in-depth shit, not just like stupid content, but actual like 3-hour conversations and shit. I wonder, they must have some real strange interaction with humans where people go up.
Sure.
People go up to
know
them.
you.
People know you. People come to
And
like,
you have no idea who they are.
yeah. Like people know so much about you.
Yeah.
And so
feel a sense of like kindredness with you.
yeah, sense of vulnerability, sense of like, it must be
An odd social like role to play that's like a particularly new like social kind of role that's able to be played
yeah.
in our world. I remember the other thing I was going to say about him is that like you hear like I think there is like a fuck Joe Rogan sentiment amongst, in my opinion, shallow thinking individuals.
yeah. Hot
But
take.
all of like any kind of deep criticism or any like criticisms I hear about him that are like thorough always feel really hateful. Like it doesn't like I've never really heard anyone offer a legitimately critical, thoughtful criticism or critique of what he does. It's always some hateful like, oh, well, he's just a conservative. Like he's just using his platform to like spread conspiracies and like and it becomes hateful because like, yeah, you might think that about him, but also he's using a platform to share a lot of other things too. And he's also not explicitly political necessarily. So like that criticism is kind of invalid, you know? And the core of them is usually just kind of hateful.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just, it's just like minimizing people to just this one thing you heard about them.
Yeah.
And like,
and I'm sure a lot of those people haven't actually like listened to full episodes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that tends to be the case with a lot of stuff. That's why people hate Jordan Peterson, like with an absolute passion.
They really do. Yeah. More than Joe, I would say.
More than Joe, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
People are like celebrating his demise. Like when he went to rehab, everyone's like, "Fuck Jordan Peterson, like, he deserves it."
It's like, guys, fucking hell, like he's just a guy.
Yeah, he's just a guy. Like he doesn't. He's really doesn't have that much of an impact on you. Is the thing, you know?
Yeah. That's also true. Should we get into this Maoist cult before we sort of get into the tarot cards?
Yeah.
To finish it off with an interesting political diversion in your life, sort of, went into one cult and you thought you were free from the spell, but
yeah, I'm ashamed to hear it back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think what Coco's referring to is a brief stint that I had in a political organization that I think my involvement with was influenced largely by a lot of the same kind of problems of like just having no idea who I was, having no idea like what my perspective on the world was, and having no like just being really dissociated from like myself and what I thought was true and what my real experience of the universe and the world was. And because of that, like dissociation, being vulnerable to like whatever environment I was in and just like falling into ideologies that I would like really take on as my own. I think that has in part to do with like the testosterone thing too, of like being presented with an ideology that's kind of all encompassing and then feeling like so like taking it on because it gives you something, you know what I mean? It gives like, oh yeah, that's what I think because you really had no idea what you thought before. But yeah, I was just like involved in a really violent political organization.
Yeah,
I suppose you could
sounds
say.
Extreme.
Yeah.
But I mean, the bit that interests me is, I guess, like what you said about.
Is this okay?
Yeah, you do as you please. Yeah. Feet on show.
Oh, like I was all nervous before. Look at me.
Yeah. It's like when you started, like you're like hand was shaking. Now you're.
I don't know.
Toes out. Toes out. Speaking about extreme political. But yeah, I guess it's just a connection of like of what you said just then, where it's like where you feel lost in the world, and when this sort of opportunity arises, and you take it as your
truth.
You take it as your truth. Yeah. It's just that tends to happen on a lot. Right, whenever someone's in a vulnerable position in their life, a vulnerable state in their life, you become extra gullible to these sort of side quests in life. I don't know what to call them. They're sort of.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just become vulnerable to like. Well, I think when you don't have a relationship, like a kind of communicative relationship with yourself, you're just vulnerable to like whatever communication is being presented to you. And like, I lost my train of thought, but just, what was like surprising to me about that whole experience was that like, I walked out of it feeling like such an idiot because I was like, I've seen this before. You know what I mean? Like, I've done this before, and I still fell for it.
Yeah.
Like, what a fucking idiot. And then after, like, it's just funny looking at the timeline of it. Like, I got kicked out of that because I was asking too many questions, essentially. There's, like, a much bigger story that I don't need to go into. But, like, I was essentially, like, removed and, like, isolated from that organization. And I think the core of that was I was just too curious. I was asking too many questions. I wasn't as obedient as they needed me to be, essentially. But then after that, that's when the testosterone thing started. And it's like, oh, I just fell into another one, you know? And I think I've said this to you. I said this to you last time we were talking about some of this stuff. Like, after all of those things happening to me, and it just repetitively happening over and over again, I just all of a sudden became aware of, like, the problem is that I don't know who I am. Like, the problem is that, like, I am not connected to myself. I don't really know, like, who I am and what I feel. I either deny or am kind of, like, deaf to my own body's, like, signals that sent to me, you know? And the thing is, like, your heart breaks until it stays open was the thing I said. And, like, I think it's an old Rumi quote. He's, like, a poet. But, like, part of it is that, like, my heart breaks in the sense of, like, I would go into this thing, take on this identity, and then it would just be shattered by reality. Like, it would just be shattered by, like, this isn't real, this isn't true, this isn't your truth, whatever. And that like, those experiences were difficult and felt like heartbreak of, like, who I thought I was in this context, and the world that I thought I lived in this context, which I thought was real. It just shattered, it just broke, and then your heart breaks, and, like, it just breaks and breaks and breaks until at one point I just felt like I got the message, and I was like, it broke, and then my heart just, like, stayed open. And the openness is, like, that's where, like, the connection to myself was found, in a way of, like, oh, it's not about taking on, like, some external identity. It's not about, like, participating in some ideology and participating in some group that's going to give me an identity. It's like, no, it has to come from within me. It has to come from, like, this emptiness, like, this broken. It doesn't have to come from brokenness always, but it has to be, like, the origin of it has to be, like, yourself. You know what I mean? I think the core of, like, of your identity, it has to be inside. You can't externalize that. And, like,
how do you basically, then the question is just like, how do you make those differences? You know, how do you recognize what is intuition and what is?
I don't know. Other than, I think the differentiating factor is, like, the level of trust that you have for yourself. So, like, if you start to develop trust for, like, your decision-making process, and start to develop trust for, like, your gut feelings, then, like, it's almost like a feedback. Then you start to, like, receive the messages better. Do you know what I mean? Like, you start to trust yourself, and then the messages start to come in more. Am I making sense?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Like, I just felt like one day I just decided to just, like, trust what my gut feeling was, rather than checking my gut feeling with, well, how would this person think about this, or this, having a gut feeling and being like, how does that fit into this larger ideology I'm supposed to participate in? I just started, like, cutting that connection to the outside and just, like, be like, well, this is the gut feeling. I'm just going to trust it and see what happens. I'm just going to not kind of question the gut feeling and not try and compare it or, like, contrast it or let someone else have an opinion about it. I just, like, made the decision one day to just be like, okay, I'm just going to, like, see what happens, you know?
Yeah.
And then the more time goes on, the more you develop that trust for your intuition and, like, your gut feelings, you know? And then...
Have you felt that before? Or is that sort of like a newfound thing after?
I think it's new.
Yeah.
I think it's a result of, like...
All the times you had your heart broken by the world.
Yeah. All the time, it's almost like all the times I've broken my own heart.
Yeah. Well,
like, I take responsibility. I'm not interested in, like, blaming anyone for, like, my stupidity or, like, my confusion, my, like, my years of being lost. It was all me. Like, I made all those choices.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, but I think it is a new thing. Do you trust yourself?
Do I trust myself? Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah.
I'm always doubting myself.
Yeah. That's healthy.
Yeah, I question myself all the time. Yeah, I mean, you know, I like the. I guess the more I grow, the more I realize, you know, things don't turn out the way you initially wanted them to, with life. But it's also just sort of letting go of certain expectations of life in the first place as well.
Yeah.
And I trust I don't know, the whole trust myself. I'm not sure that's the right question for me. For me, it's kind of like I'm trusting myself with trying things out in life, and not sort of just like giving up because they sort of don't work out in more ways than one. Because I feel like things not working out can be things don't work out for multiple reasons. Something I've been thinking about a lot recently, where it's like I'm trying to connect with my intuition, and I'm trying to connect with my gut feeling, and sometimes I confuse myself on what that actually means. Because, for example, for this a personal example with this YouTube thing that I'm trying to do, I
sorry, this chocolate was exceedingly messy.
Yeah, that's okay. It's getting a bit melty. I question myself as like, hey, can I actually make this YouTube thing work? And also it's like, well, I'm not naturally putting the enough effort in for it to work. So does that mean I'm not naturally inclined to make this my career? But then also at the same time, it's like, well, no, if I just not do anything that I don't feel like doing, then I'm probably not going to fucking get anything done in life in the first place.
Yeah.
Which I've always felt that way. But then it's just like, it's the bit where I've been trying to connect with more is my intuition and my gut feeling of like, do I really want this? Or is this like an idea that I think I want?
But you also have to recognize that wanting something and like attempting to achieve something requires like grit, and there's consequence to it. And so it's about like whether or not the desire is strong enough to like kind of sit through the amount of like grit and patience and hard work that it's going to take.
And also, reconnect my headphone. And also something I heard from Jordan Peterson that I quite like.
Your guy.
My guy was, you know, it's like not only like when you're trying to achieve something, of course it's important, like what is the goal here? Like what are you trying to achieve? Like what is it that you're trying to achieve is important to think about. But also it's important to think about what hell are you trying to avoid by doing this? Like what's the contrary? Like if you don't do this, then
that's actually a bigger motivating factor for human behavior of like how do you avoid aversive experiences? That's going to be a lot more like you derive a lot more like
motivation, I guess.
Yeah, motivation is the word. Than you do from like envisioning what you actually want.
Yeah, kind of avoiding hell. Avoiding hell is probably a bigger.
Make you run faster.
It makes you run faster than trying to chase heaven.
Into heaven.
Yeah. It's a bigger motivation to just like.
There's and I think has to be like evolutionary and like biochemical signaling processes that have to do with like, you're gonna be like initiated more like biochemically by trying to like run away from something that's gonna eat you than you are trying to like pick some berries or something. You know what I mean? Like there's more incentive evolutionarily and behaviorally to avoid being killed than there is to like approach things that are like beneficial for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what hell are you trying to avoid?
Life of life of quiet desperation, I guess. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Yeah, a life of a life of not trying. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So, and I feel like I'm.
What's the feeling like? What does it feel like for you to realize that you haven't been trying?
Do you know what? It's not that, because I don't think I haven't been trying. So I'm not particularly.
But how would you feel if you realized that you hadn't been trying?
How would I feel? If, I kind of. It's interesting because I do feel that, you know, and I kind of there's like a part in me that constantly feels that I'm not trying enough. It's not that I'm not trying, but it's I'm not trying enough, you know, which on one side is, you know, it's kind of like a negative feeling, because it can have a sense of guilt that I'm not trying to. And I'm not pushing hard enough for my dreams, or not dreams, but, you know, just trying to actually make something. But also, that was weird. Also, I've said this before as well. I like the fact that I have high standards for myself, and I like the fact that I do question myself, and I do ask myself those questions, because I'd rather do that than.
Your self-criticism is like catalyzing.
Yeah, like I like being self-critical, because then it propels me to, in my mind, be a better human, whatever that might mean, you know.
It's like you're constantly checking your work.
Yeah, and just not just my work, but just myself. You know, how I go about my lifestyle. And
do you think sometimes that feels like looping, where you're like, if you weren't so self-critical, if you weren't so like aware of places where you could improve, you would maybe be like moving forward faster?
Yeah, I have thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember when I was younger, there was a level of like, I don't know if innocence is the right word, but there was like a level of innocence for me where
naivety, maybe.
Yeah, I would just do shit and not question it at all. I would just like do stuff that now I would think, oh, that's a bit too cringy to do, or that, or whatever. Just like, you know, like kind of. I feel like when you get older, like your ego starts putting a few more boundaries on you, which, you know, I'm sure there's good and bad about that. But I have definitely felt that's changed over the years, and now I'm a lot more conscious on basically everything I do.
Well, you have a Virgo moon.
What does that mean?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. What's that mean?
Your moon is kind of like your emotional experience. It has a lot to do with like your kind of like daily emotional experience in life and how you're processing the world. And Virgo is like this, basically the sign of like discernment and self-criticism, and like Virgos can be very anxious because they're very detail oriented and like very critical. So having your moon in Virgo means that you pay really close attention to detail with yourself and with other people. And so like I feel like I can attest to this, just like I can see that as like a feature of who you are. Like you're just things don't really slip past you. Do you know what I mean? Like you're pretty cognizant and aware of like little things that are going on within your own self and like within other people's behavior, and that you're processing little things like that all the time, and you're making decisions based on like those like little criticisms that you pick up on. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Do you know what? It manifests itself physically sometimes as well. I've never actually taught this before to anyone, but my right side of my face, my cheek, and I can feel it a little bit now. Yeah. Like when I go through periods of like, maybe not going about my life exactly how I'd like to go about my life. My body tells me like my right side gets hot, and it stays that. It can stay that for days. and I feel it. Like I had a period recently
Interesting.
where honestly for like a week, the right side of my face was a bit
What was going on?
just like, like not just a bit of a rhythm. It kind of happens whenever when I have like a long weekend or something, when I'm just like partying, having a fun time, but then I sort of slip out of my routine, and like
Complacency.
complacency, and like I'm not going about my life exactly how I want it, and
And your body tells you.
my body's like,
This is what I was saying about like our bodies send us signals.
yeah,
And like it will I truly believe that like it will tell you where you're fucking up if you're paying attention.
yeah,
And it'll also send you affirmative signals of like something.
yeah, feeling
it's
good.
Both, yeah, it's
Yeah.
both. But
But
that's interesting.
yeah.
Does it feel this thing of like, oh, here goes the cheek again?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Honestly, it's like, here we go. It's hot
I hear
again.
you, cheek. I hear you.
Oh, yeah. Time to fix some shit. Time to get back into my, yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah. It happens. It's been happening for years as well. Yeah. Just manifesting itself.
Well, I think something I was going to mention earlier, you were asking me about, I don't know, just like how I guess I'd like developed also more of a sense of like connection with my husband, like moved away from externally identifying myself more. And I think another answer to that question is like physical exercise, like particularly doing martial arts, like puts you in such a closer connection to like the processes of your body, like putting yourself in positions regularly where you're like at your capacity of like capability, like you've run as far as you can run, like you've been hit in the face as many times as you can, or like whatever it is, like just like the actual kind of physical limitations of your body, having a relationship with those like physical limitations, I think also starts to develop your relationship with yourself, where you like, oh, like this is what I'm made of, like this is what my body can do. This is like, you start to have a relationship of like understanding the relationship between your kind of willpower and your actual limitations, and I think like just if I was going to point to one thing that like saved me from this like horrible loop of like self-identity crisis, it would probably be martial arts, like just like physical movement, and it goes a little bit into this thing about like your body, like the relationship that you have with your body being like the relationship you have to yourself and your identity, where like it's not only your body sending your signals, but there's a feedback, like you also have to put some input in, or you also have to tell your body kind of like, hey bitch, I'm in control, you know what I mean, like you don't want to run right now, or like you don't want to whatever, but like you have to kind of like tamper it and like what's the word, just like wrangle it and be like, I'm in control.
Fight the resistance.
There's the relationship of like how of your body and speaking to it goes both ways, and I think that trust with the body builds over time the more that you engage with it, because now like one of my things, I was like, if I don't work out for a couple days, I start to feel really wonky, like your cheek thing a little bit, it's like emotionally I get kind of like, I just get a little depressive or like complacent. And I don't know how to identify, but there's a specific feeling of like you haven't had your dose of endorphins in a couple days, and then it deteriorates from there.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious that it's like, okay, and then I go work out, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I feel fine.
Yeah.
Always, like every time.
Works every time. Yeah. We do tend to overcomplicate things sometimes. I mean, to be honest, what jumped out of my mind then is this like sort of new movement, of like loving yourself, and it's just like, it's such it can be so simple, just like really listen to your intuition and gut, and I mean, it's just kind of boring to say, but exercising, drinking water, and having a good nutrition.
But it's also like you need the kind of moments of like bristling to like really have it mean something, because there's like one thing where you could just kind of have like unquestioning tacit acceptance of yourself, like, oh, I feel like a piece of shit today, and I guess I'll just love myself and I'll just do nothing or whatever. Like, it's a relationship, you know. It's like a relationship of like pushing, pulling, and like,
and sometimes just like fighting through those moments of like,
yeah.
I don't want to do it, but actually,
but the actual loving thing for myself is to go do it.
Yeah, to go and like, okay, persevere. No.
Yeah. But I think there's a relationship to what you're saying about like, you don't want to feel like you're avoiding this kind of aversive experience of feeling like you're not pursuing something. And it's like, yeah, that might be challenging. Like there might be like certain like moments of grit you have to have, but it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like the loving thing to do for yourself is to like push past the challenging aspects. You know what I mean? It's like really turning into a like chicken soup for the soul here.
Yeah.
Did y'all have those here?
Chicken soup for the soul?
Yeah.
No, but I get what it means. Yeah.
I guess it's an American thing. It's like, it was like this book series.
Oh, it's like a thing.
Yeah. It was like this book series of like, I guess it was just like early, just self-help type shit. And there was one for everyone, like chicken soup for the teenage puberty soul. Or like chicken soup for the empty nester.
Yeah, I love
like,
the title.
That's
hilarious. Chicken soup, yeah. Chicken soup for the soul. Cool. That was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you were a bit nervous before we started. Do you feel at ease now?
Yeah. Clearly,
yeah.
That's how it always goes. Like it takes me a little minute to
ease in.
Yeah. But I was also thinking, I don't know if you remember the tarot reading I gave you last time.
Honestly, it
was about like trusting your intuition, like trusting your gut.
Yes.
I just remember like that was the kind of takeaway of it. I was like, you have to like do the thing that makes you feel like you know, just like the happy baby.
Yeah.
You know? I was just thinking about that when you're mentioning like trusting your gut. And I have my tarot cards.
Well, you do have your tarot cards, yeah. Well, and I think it's about time we crack them open, actually. Yeah.
So it's your birthday tomorrow.
It's my birthday tomorrow.
Tell me how we feel about that.
On one side, I feel good about getting older. I like growing up. I like feeling like this progression in my life, and I feel like time time can sort of lead to both a crisis of like, I'm not achieving enough in my life to, I don't know. Time's a great teacher, innit? Again, it's like cliche to say, but you know, time's a great healer. It's a great teacher. It's a great gives you a good perspective on life. And the one thing about that's been freaking me out this year is that time's been flying. And to be honest, ever since sort of COVID started, time's been flying really quick for me. And it has put me in a state of like a bit more urgency, which I like, honestly.
Yeah.
I like feeling like, hey, I need to get something done while I'm still on this planet, and I'm really healthy, and I'm like have basically no responsibility in my life now. Like now is my time to really try shit and really just try shit. What I was talking about before, just feeling like I wanna have a go at life and see where it takes me.
Do you feel like you haven't had a go? You haven't been going?
No, I have. I feel like I have been taking a somewhat unorthodox path, because I've had many opportunities in my life where I could have taken a path, and I probably would have been alright as well, like a decent job type of thing, like in the film industry, which is kind of like plan B, I guess. and it's really not a terrible plan B. But you know,
But you would always wonder.
yeah, exactly. And if I do go down the path of just like, you know, being like a camera operator and whatever, I think that would be completely fine by me. It's just the fact that I have the opportunity to do something else is kind of a I'd like to not go throughout the rest of my life just asking what if questions. So yeah, I kind of went roundabouts there, but
Well, I can say I'm already 27, so as an elder.
as an elder,
No, I just think I think I relate to what you're saying, and it being potentially like kind of a temporally dependent experience of like at a certain age, like that feeling just starts to come out a little bit more of like, I don't know, just like
well, the
it
urgency
becomes
part.
an age, like being 27, like
Yeah.
it becomes an age where you're like, what are you doing? Like you're either gonna fucking do it or you're
No,
not,
exactly.
kind of.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
at
It's
this
like
kind of,
yeah,
like, juncture point.
yeah. I don't want to just be a fucking. I don't want to be a loser. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
me
literally
neither.
it's what it is. Like I don't want to just like. Yeah, I want to do something significant in my life. You know. In whatever that aspect that that doesn't mean like. You know, that doesn't mean like, I want to just completely change the world, or like, I don't know, like significant can mean significant is subjective to the person that's doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's whatever feels significant to me.
Do you think they're shuffled yet?
Huh?
Do you think they're shuffled?
I think
yet?
they're shuffled. I think they're shuffled. Yes.
Okay, you can cut the deck.
Cut the deck. Can I cut them a couple of times?
Do whatever you want.
There we go.
Lovers.
The lovers. Pentacons. Pentacles.
Money. That's
Money. Let's go. So, is there a way you go about?
I mean, no. I mean, no. I'm in. Oh, thanks. I'm intuitive.
You're intuitive.
This guy intuitive. I usually kind of just draw until I'm like, okay, I'm seeing something.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But hey, I'm not a professional here, so just
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
riff here.
Yes.
So I would say, first of all, I'm noticing like a lot of pentacles, which is like money and like building something. So it has to do with like the earth element. Well, first of all, the lovers is kind of like the overruling card here, which has a lot to do with, it can be like relationships, but it can also be like how your relationship to yourself is reflected through like things that you engage with externally. So like the Lover's card is kind of a mirror of like relationships in a way are mirrors for us about like what we're seeing in ourselves. So it doesn't always mean that like it's about another person. It's really about how relationships that we have, experiences that we have, are giving us reflections back to ourselves about who we are. So like, I think it can also relate to like in like romantic relationships sometimes, or like just even, it can be even friends, like even friendly relationships that like really make you feel good. For the most part, what it's doing is giving you a reflection of what you like about yourself. It's like showing you, like it's bringing out the positive parts of you. It's like showing you like, oh, actually what this person is inspiring has been inside of me all along. So like it could be just a moment of like getting reflection back onto like yourself, about yourself. And so like maybe like certain friendships you have or certain situations that you in where you're like learning or you're like building a better relationship with yourself, and you're like getting a reflection back onto yourself that might feel good. Do you think, does that resonate in any way?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So next, what comes after that is Ten of Pentacles, Six of Pentacles, and Ace of Pentacles, which is like, Ten of Pentacles is kind of like abundance, like earthly abundance. So it could be indicating like, I think just in terms of what you're saying, like it's almost like a beacon of, it's kind of signaling like some type of success about like building something. Like there is an abundance of like earthly material that comes from building something. So it could be money, or it could just also be like the success of having something materialized, you know, like, oh, you actually did the thing, like it became something. And Ace of Pentacles is also kind of saying that it's like the spark of initiation that creates something material. So like these two cards here are like the actual physical manifestation of like what you're trying to build, you know. And the Six of Pentacles here is about, it's like the card of charity. So it's about kind of like the give and take relationship that you have. So like it can be a reminder of like, are you giving too much? Are you taking too much? Or like to reflect on the give and take relationships that you have. So that with the Lovers might also mean that there's something about this thing that you're building that has to do with like the give and take with people around you. And three of Pentacles is down here too, which is like working together, like teamwork. This is the card of like teamwork, like build it, like bringing people in to like help you. And so there might be something of like not having to go it alone necessarily, like being able to bring in other people or like use the relationships that you have to like catalyze you forward. It's like you're not alone.
Yeah.
In this.
I have actually been thinking about that a lot, to be fair. So
yeah. And it's not that like you have to like be in a partnership of like, you know, it's not like it can't be your project, but it's just like let the world influence you. Like let the way that other people are reacting and responding to what you're doing like push you and kind of shape you, and like be responsive to like what the give and take is of like energy. And then the other two cards here, Two of Wands is like, it's like this guy who's like looking across the horizon, like planning something. He's like planning for his success and like planning for his future, and like kind of organizing his willpower and trying to determine what he's going to do with it.
The devil.
But dun, dun, dun. The devil is like, actually I think when the devil comes up, it's like signifies the potential for liberation, like the possibility for being liberated from something, because like it signifies like your attachments and like your, especially like attachments you have like attachments you have to the past. So like this could be like things in the past that have kept you from building the thing that you want to build, things that like even just like cognitive attachments or like associative kind of like boundaries that have not been helpful, or like that are no longer serving you. And so this is just like highlighting, like it's shining a light on like where those limitations and like where those like attachments that have been holding you back are. And when they get illuminated, because as you're looking forward, like these things are getting illuminated, like what has kept me from actually like building and like planning, you know?
Okay, I see what you mean.
Like you have the opportunity to look at those things and bring people in to help you, like teamwork, you know?
It's good. I like that.
I feel like it's not done yet.
It's not done yet.
Uh-oh.
Death, Tower, bad cards. I like it. I like a bit of a challenge, so let's see it.
Well, yeah. I think these are all good things.
Yeah, I mean...
I think they came out.
I mean, I'm always the one to see silver lining and things, so
I think
let's hear it.
The Tower is usually like the crumbling of the things we've built on our foundation that are unsustainable. So like you have your foundation, which is like you, and then most people have like built these constructs on top of the foundation of their identity, that are, you know, that the kind of authenticity of them is dependent on the person or whatever. So like the Tower, like that's the foundation, and like this is all the things that you've like built. And when it crumbles, like when the Tower crumbles, it's like the falling of the things that aren't serving you. It's just the falling of the things that you've built on top of your identity that maybe aren't true to you anymore. So the experience of this can be painful or challenging, or the experience of it can be liberating. It's just a matter of how you look at it. But what's coming next is my guy, the Nine of Cups, who's like, look at him. You know what I mean?
him.
He's like so into himself. Like, he's like, look at what I got. Like, I know what I got. And I'm like, just fucking, I'm proud of it. And so this could be like whatever comes after the tower. I usually think of like what's being exposed after like the fall of the tower. And what's being exposed is like a level of like abundance and like emotional like happiness, because cups is like your emotions. So like once you let go of these things that have been like holding you back and like just let them fall away, like what is left over, like what's left in the ashes of that is like you actually have like there's like a purity of like joy that's left over there. And then death says a similar thing of just death I think here in this context is just saying like let it compost. Do you know what I mean? Like just let it go. Like all those things that fall away, just like let them go. Do one more. Ace of Cups.
Ace of Cups.
The card of, it's the Holy Grail. It's the card of just like ultimate peace and happiness.
Really?
Yeah. Ain't it sweet? Look at it. It's just a sweet little card.
That is a sweet card. It's very wow. It's very peaceful. It's a very peaceful card.
Yeah. Randall Carlson has a lecture about the Ace of Cups.
He has a lecture about the Ace of Cups.
Yeah.
Does he?
Check it out, everybody.
Yeah. Randall Carlson with the Ace of Cups.
Yeah.
Was it just?
It's about like the Holy Grail, like I was saying earlier, of like the secrets of the mysteries of the universe being contained within the Holy Grail. But that's another.
Yeah, so now a whole another conversation.
How are you feeling about all this?
Good. I like it. And yeah, it's interesting because, with these things with sort of readings, they can be. I always find them. I always think they're always a bit hit and miss, but like whenever I do them, I always find something. Yeah, tips and tricks. But yeah, I like it. I think is. Yeah, I have been thinking about, to be honest, a lot of this, just about like teamwork and bringing people in to help me in certain situations. I have been, because I feel like I do give a decent amount of energy, or I have done in the past. I'm sort of making that shift now to sort of receiving. Yeah,
I think this can also be a card of like receiving.
Yeah, and like with the tower as well, it's just like I feel like I have built a foundation on just like I've built a foundation on. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I have been given a lot in my life in terms of just like I've been offered work quite often. I haven't necessarily had to work very hard to get certain things. It's sort of just been offered to me, and I also do. It's not completely random that people have offered me things because, whenever they do, I do a good job at them.
Yeah.
So it's not like completely.
It's not unwarranted, like you've.
Yeah, I do feel like I have earned it, but I also feel like, in some sense, it's I don't want to go about my life just expecting things from the world and expecting it just have a free reign of opportunity just to constantly come at me, and free reign of just like just a free reign of things to come at me. I do or maybe perhaps I'm too romantic about the idea of just like having challenges and then like persevering through those challenges. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm sort of putting challenges on myself just to see. Kind of go through with them, kind of materialize them.
Well, yeah, and there's like some element of choice and like autonomy involved in trying to go your own way rather than just like having the things be handed to you, or just like accepting the things that or receiving the things that are available to you.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Any other questions?
No.
It's done.
It's done. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me. Well, it's actually tomorrow, but
Yeah,
just
but
it's
happy early birthday.
happy early birthday.
We're in the 24-hour window.
Yeah.
I'm going to draw a card for the podcast.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear it. Or just the one card.
Well, let's see what happens.
Okay. All right.
Let's see if it's telling me anything. Do you want a card for the KOKO Pods as a whole or for this episode?
KOKO Pods as a whole. It's a greenery. It's a blue.
Yeah. Who do we have here?
King of Swords.
Well, this first card, I actually really love this card. Seven of Wands. To the viewers.
It's the viewers.
Seven of Wands is basically like a card of perseverance, essentially. So what you're saying makes sense. And it's a card that's saying like, you want this thing and you're really going to have to work for it, but it's also kind of showing you like, you have everything you need. You just have to work for it.
Yeah.
Like you have all the resources and you have all the skill set, like you're capable of this, but you're still going to have to work for it. Now is a time of like, it's like a form of patience of like having to just put in the hard work. It's a grit thing. It's a grit thing.
Yeah.
But you don't question whether or not you're going to succeed or whether or not you're capable of it, because you are. King of Swords. I think of the King of Swords as like ultimate scientist. Like the King of Swords is has like mastered a certain level of like mental energy. Like I feel like the King of Swords,
Like a stoic.
yeah, like he can be a bit cold and cutting and like dry, but like he knows the truth. Like his sword is like cuts away the things that are not true. And so it's also like swords are like mental energy. So it could just be the thing about like communication is like a mental thing, you know what I mean? And like the podcast being a form of communication, of like developing some level of like mastery over communication, you know? And then the Four of Cups is like, Four of Cups can be, it's an opportunity that's being offered to you either, and like he's kind of like ignoring it. He's kind of like pouting about it. He's kind of like ignoring it. So it can either be like, it's either like something that you're not, like some type of feeling or some opportunity that you're not acknowledging, or some opportunity that you don't want. So I think sometimes it can be like, there's a level of like, I think it can be about gratitude. You know what I mean? Like there's something that's there, but you're just like, I don't want to look at it. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't want to like participate in that. And what it could be is just appreciating the thing that you have. Like that's what needs to be done. Or it could be like an opportunity that's available that you're uncertain about. So I don't know if that relates to anything.
Perhaps it's what I was saying earlier about things being given to me when in the fact that I sort of want to make my own thing. So I guess it's that.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, for sure that makes sense for like just being handed something, but being like rejecting the thing that you're being handed. And then what's next is like Two of Swords is kind of also about choice. It's essentially like she has like, I'm not showing all the cards. I should show all the cards.
That's fine. It's probably be a bit out of focus anyway.
Two of Swords is just about like making a choice of like which direction you're going to go. There's like two paths diverge, you know, you can go one way or the other. And like this card being in between these two is like, yeah, maybe you're choosing whether or not to take the thing that's just like offered, or like develop your own sense of like mastery and develop your own like truth, your own sword forward, you know? Queen of Wands is like the card of, she's like the blood, sex, magic lady, like,
Blood, sex, magic.
yeah, there's just something about the Queen of Swords that's like, it's about this kind of like deeper pulse of like mystery and magic that kind of just undergirds a lot of things. And so when she comes up, it could be like either your ability to tap into that, or like just this kind of influence. It could be like synchronicities occurring, or like maybe that's like an energy that you might be embodying in some way of like the way that you're using your creativity. You know, like it can also just be a card of, if you're not into the whole blood, sex, magic thing, it could just be a card of like creativity, like creative energy. And then Four of Pentacles is like stability, structure. So it could be like in the coins, like he's just like holding onto his coins, like look at all these coins. So this is like building, like it's again like building and knowing what you have and being like, it could almost even signify like appreciate how far you've come so far, you know what I mean? And like be aware of like the things you have built already,
Yeah.
and appreciate the things you have built, and like hold on to them, you know, like hold on to like the pride or the feeling of security that might give you, you know.
I like it. Very, I feel like two very positive readings.
Well, it's a matter of the reader too.
A matter of the reader, definitely. Yeah.
Having a optimistic
Yeah.
slant. No, not that there's anything I could have read in there that was.
No,
I read it honestly. As
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. I mean, I like things on the positive side anyway. Yeah. Or rather, actually, just on the honest side. But I feel like
yeah.
nothing interesting. Let's see it. Chariot.
Go forth. That's what, it's like the card of like forward movement.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's what a lot of this podcast is going to be, you know? Just like not lose track of what I'm trying to achieve and not become paralyzed by the pressure of it. And sort of just do it without questioning it too much. Yeah.
Well, I'll also use this as an opportunity to shout out my own
Your
podcast.
Yes, please. So you have started.
I have one episode. Lana Power Hour podcast. Catch me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcast. I don't know what Podbean puts you on, but
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're on all of them. Actually, I need to do that because I think I'm just on Spotify and Apple.
Okay.
Currently. Lana Power Hour. I like it.
Yeah, it was my radio show in college actually. I used to do a radio show, so it's not a new. It's like I'm just bringing it back, new and improved. Yeah, I used to play music, but now I'm just yammering on about science, usually.
Science and the connection to magic and mystery, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to listening to the first one.
I'll send you a link.
Yes, please. I'll put a link in the description for anyone that's listening that managed to come this far.
Yeah, God bless you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming this far on. How are you feeling about it? Are you excited?
About which? This one or
yeah, yours about starting this sort of.
No, I feel actually really good. I feel like I have a lot to say.
Yes.
Kind of like
You do.
I turned on a microphone, like, and I just started talking. That's kind of how it started. And I was like, actually, like, I have so much shit I want to say. And like, I feel excited about building a container for like, for me to express my thoughts. So like the podcast is just a container, and then I can start dumping stuff into it.
Yeah.
And I intentionally didn't really build a big structure about like, this is going to be the theme and this is going to be the intention. And I was kind of like wanting it to be more organic of like whatever kind of comes out, it's going to be whatever it is, like letting it unfold kind of organically. But yeah. Lana Power, our podcast.
Lana Power. Sweet. We good? Are we
good.
Yeah? Are we gonna end it? It's been a pleasure having you on.
Absolutely.
I kind of knew that I'd want to have you on this podcast pretty soon after we met. I was like, it's gonna be a moment in the future where it's gonna happen. But yeah,
This bitch won't shut up.
yeah.
Put her in front of a microphone.
Put it in front of a microphone and let it all happen. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Once again.
Thanks for
and maybe I'll be on.
I know, maybe I'll have to come on.
Yeah.
The LPH.
The LPH. The LPH.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Farewell.
Farewell.